For the last month or so, Red Badger have been working with the Pride in London Foundation, or organisation, for the festival. And so I'm sure you've heard of Pride in London. It's quite famous, but you might not have known that Pride in London is run by volunteers. And they have a lot of trouble getting tech resource because most of them are not technical. So what we're doing this year is building their new native app for them in time for the festival. And we're really, really excited about this opportunity, but it's all going to be voluntary, it's all going to be in our free time, and of course in React Native. So this will very likely be an open source project that we're going to open up. We're still confirming that with them. But it is really, really likely. So we might be asking for contributions from all of you to sort of help work on this project for the foundation. But the main question to you all really is that Pride are biting off a lot of stuff this year, and they need to build a new website as well. Their website's getting a little bit old. It's run on Squarespace. They even had a problem last year where they had to enter data into like 2 separate CMSs and stuff, and we can definitely help with that. That's not a good system to have. And so we're looking for help, or Pride is looking for help to work on their website this year. So if you're interested in working on very likely a open source project for an incredible organization, and working alongside us, building the native app and the website alongside each other against the same platform, against the same CMS, crucially, then please let us know. We're mainly looking for, or Pride are mainly looking for, a cross-functional team to really own this project and carry it forward. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be work probably in your own time. That's what we're doing, but we're delighted to be working with these guys. I'm sure there's a load of you guys that would be really, really interested in working on this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in this stuff, please let us know or email hello@react.london, and that would be amazing. We're going to send out a video on Twitter from the guys at Pride themselves explaining what they do and why and what they're looking for. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Anyway, so enough announcements. On to our next speaker, Marton Hipszki, to talk about analytics in React.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thanks for warming up the stage for me, guys. Now, Marcus and Enrico, thanks. I already learned something from you tonight. From Marcus, I made some notes because I saw that you made some notes before you came to the stage. So I'm definitely going to look at render props. Ooh. And I'm going to use VS Code Zen mode, which I've never used before. So that's cool. And Next.js is cool. I haven't used that yet, but it looks really cool. And I'm going to try the stage now, how long it is, because I've never tried this long stage before. So let's see how it feels, because the thing is, and you're going to see this in a second, that I didn't prepare as good as the guys did. Last night I wrote up this application I'm going to show you, and that is my slides. So it can go wrong, but it goes wrong, it's going to be horrible. Hopefully not. So I feel really miserable now. It's not my first talk. It's been a few before, but let's kick this off. Okay, and please excuse my voice because I've got a bit of cold going on. So this is a React application, and we are going to kick this off soon. As you can see, that's my first slide. You're gonna see that render in a second. And oops, it's working already. It shouldn't. Anyway. So, hello React London. This talk is going to be about analytics. Analytics is a topic which is when we hear it, front-end developers, we normally just try to run away and leave the room. This is why I chose the topic, because I hated it, so I looked into it. over the years, and I learned that it's actually important, and we shouldn't be shy. We should be really learn how analytics work, and we're going to see why it's that important. Okay, so this is my little application. We have the slides in the middle, and 2 buttons. One button you don't see probably, or I don't see, but this is really cool actually, because we shouldn't see it. We can't go back. So, hello React London. My name is Marton. I'm working for Equal Experts. And this talk is about analytics in a React Redux single page application. And tonight we are going to touch on these topics. Analytics GTM stands for Google Tag Manager. Probably most of you know. Architectural aspect of analytics and implementing analytics, and single page application versus traditional website, because we need to do things slightly different in single page applications. Cool. So now if I click the next button, we should go to the next slide. Oh, cool. Okay. So analytics for better user experience. So how do we use analytics for better experience? We are capturing indicative data, and based on the data, we can make decisions if we want to change something in our application or on our web page or not. And why is it important? Because without indicative data, we won't be able to understand our users. So we need to understand the users in order to improve the user experience, to deliver a better experience for them, and therefore grow the business we are working in. Okay, so why is it important? Because not having event tracking means you are in pitch black, and you probably won't be able to make any decisions on how to improve your product because you don't have any feedback from your users. Then if you have tracking setup, analytics setup, then that's a good start. But can you trust your tracking setup or not? That's an interesting question which we should ask ourselves. And now if you have it set up correctly, and if it works correctly in your application, then you can make the right decisions, so you can steer the business to the right direction. Cool. First slide done. Okay, so just a very quick recap on Google Tag Manager. And I can see already people are falling asleep because this topic is what we don't really like. I will try to make it more interesting along the way. So, Google Tag Manager, we have 3 things: data layer variables, triggers, and tags. So data layer variables are for extracting information. Triggers are for conditionally firing tags. And tags are actually relaying information to third-party services like Google Analytics. All of these needs to be set up in Google Tag Manager, which is basically just an administration interface. The outcome of the work of the analytics folks will be GTM.js for us to be used in the browser. And this is for sharing information. So how can we share information? When we load the page, we can use window data layer. GTM.js will look for that in the global scope. And that's an array, so we can put some stuff in there. And when the page loads, and we're going to see that working hopefully, because I have internet access. When the page loads, GTM.js can pick up that information and send it right to GTM through GTM to Google Analytics actually. Cool. There's another way of adding analytics to the page, and that's by these custom data attributes. And there's also another way. Once GTM.js has loaded, you can push some information to the data layer, and that's going to trigger some events and therefore fire the tags and send some info to, for instance, Google Analytics. Cool. So now, what's the difference between handling this problem in single-page applications versus traditional websites? So GTM has built-ins to help you up and running very quickly, but they are fairly limited. So we can use custom events. We can do things like when I click on this button, then using built-in configuration and options in GTM, it can be tracked. But if I do more fancy stuff, it's going to be very difficult to set up with the built-ins. So you can do custom events. So in single page, there's only a single page view happening, first of all, in the single page applications, because there's no navigation. Like from page to page, there's no page reload. So that's a problem, and I need to work around that. Data is only available after the single page application is loaded, so anything you want to push to the data layer and therefore let Google Analytics know, that needs to wait to be sent until the single page application has been loaded. Cool. So there is some extra work needed. We need to add virtual page views. It's fairly easy to implement it. If you use React Router, then you can just hook into React Router. I will show you how. And the other thing is that you need to take care of your data layer. The data layer variable stores all the information you are making available for Google Tag Manager. You need to push an existing variable on the data layer and push the value undefined in there if you want to clear that from the data layer. Otherwise, accidentally, you can invalidate your results because some triggers and tags might pick up the product ID in this instance. However, they shouldn't. So just to be careful of that. Cool. Okay. So we have a little demo, and I'm going to share some code with you. It's very simple. The demo is about, we have a nice little input box here. Right, and you can send this message. And now I'm going to open this debug thing here. What I'm using for demoing is the Google Tag Manager Chrome extension. Cool. So I've done a lot of clicks, so you can see on the left, when I click anywhere, right, those are the built-in Google Tag Manager tags fired. So if we send this message, what should happen is we send a message to a third-party API, which doesn't exist actually, and then we have to wait for the response to come back. So it's all cool, and then we're going to show the user that, hey, you managed to send this message in an X amount of time. So if I send this, it says sending message, right? And message was sent in about 2 seconds, 2000 milliseconds. Okay, cool. So how does this work? When I click the button, send message, the message sent tag was fired. Right, so if I open up the details, it says it's a universal analytics tag, so it went straight to GA. The action was message sent because this is how it's been set up on the Google, GTM side. In the category messages, and this is all the stuff I wanted to send through. Cool. And then when the response came back, and we saw the, hey, if you managed to send your message, the message delivered, another tag happened there. And we sent, the time taken is actually 2033 milliseconds. So if I go quickly to the Google Tag Manager to see what I'm, show what I'm talking about, these are the tags. So the message delivered and the message sent, these are the tags I set up. All right, so this message delivered. Cool. So it's an event type tracking, category messages. It's going to pick up the event. I'll show you how. And it's going to pick up all this information and send it to my Google Analytics account. Cool. So we have triggers here as well. Message delivered, that's the relevant one. Okay. It's looking for the event called message delivered, and it's going to trigger this fire this tag message delivered here. So this is how they connect to each other. And how do we grab the information from the data layer? It's in the variables, right there. Cool. So these are the built-in ones, and these are the ones we define. So for instance, this one is the message duration. All right. How you define it is message.duration, and the tag which uses it, which is going to grab that information, is the message delivered. So we close the loop, basically. These are all the three things you need to take care about. Cool. So how does it work in the code? It's probably more interesting than what we touched on so far. So this is the code. Okay. This is our little application. We are rendering the demo form when it's the demo form time right now. So if I open demo form, demo, hello, where are you? App form, oh cool, okay, there we go. It's a bit more code. So this is our form right here, and then we click on that button, the send message. It's going to run the on button click over there. The on button click prop, which is actually a callback, and it's using Redux, which you are probably familiar with. So in the map dispatch to props, we are setting up this button click, and all we do is we are dispatching the send message action. Now let's see how the send message action works. Okay, hello send message. Cool. So it's fairly simple. This is an async action. We are using Redux Thunk. So the async action creator, actually what we are looking at, is going to dispatch a message sent action. So you can use this to, for instance, show, hey, I'm sending a message. And then it is going to do some async stuff, because using a third-party API, making calls, fetching some data, or sending some information, that's async. So once the message has been sent, then we can do some more dispatches. So when you saw that, hey, it's been delivered in 2000 milliseconds, the message delivered was the one who initiated that change on the UI. And then to clear it, we scheduled another action to, hey, when we read it already, then we can just clear it. Cool. So we have an async action creator, and we are using an async action here. So how do we capture the async action, and how does it tie into analytics? Is the way to go is I created a tiny little middleware, Redux middleware, right? So the way it works is that we need to have a list of a mapping to the from the actions to the analytics events to be tracked. So we need to provide a mapping for that. And once we have the mapping and the reference to the data layer, then every time an action is dispatched, this is going to capture that in the queue of the Redux middlewares. And if we manage to find the action by type, this is how we register an action, then we can get the store state, the current state. If you notice, there is the next action over there, which I can't reach. Why we do that is that because we need to let all the middlewares run, and once they finish, they updated the store state, then we can grab some information from the store. So we grab the current state, and then we can do some transformations if we really wanted to. In the transformation, we can just pull some info from the state, and we also provide the action so that we can grab some extra info from the action itself, and then we just push to the data layer, and that's it. Cool. So let's see how this mapping looks like. That's the whole mapping. So what we do here is we just set up a very simple object, and let's check the message delivered, because this is what we touched on. Okay. So under that is custom events, message delivered. Cool. Alrighty. So what we need to do here in this transformation is that we need to provide the exact same format to be of an object to be pushed to the data layer, which the analytics guys asked us to do. Otherwise, the setup in GTM wouldn't work with our code. So the definition was that we need to have, actually I have the definition here. I'm not using Zen, too bad. Okay, anyway, so demo app. That's going to be too destructive if I try to start using something in the middle of the talk. Okay, cool. So analytics requirements. So there are two things. One is when we send a message, the other one is when the message has been sent and we want to show the delivery. So you see in the code the exact same thing like here, that the event needs to be called message sent. That's exactly what we entered in the trigger name in GTM. And the message, what analytics is interested in is the text of the message, the timestamp, and the duration. So as you can see here, we receive the state and the action, and then from the state we can grab the message, text. From the action, actually, we can grab the timestamp, because the way it looks like, I need to show you the message delivered. Cool. That it just grabs date now. Whenever it's this action is being dispatched, it grabs the timestamp. So that timestamp is going to arrive in here. And the duration is something which has been already calculated in the store. You can use also a selector or something here, because it's just plain Redux, plain JavaScript, nothing fancy. So this is a way how you grab information from here, and in the required format you push it to the data layer. Cool. All right. So this is how it works. I hope you will have questions if I missed anything which makes it less understandable. Oh, very important thing, I forgot the mapping almost. Okay, so this exported object will be merged into the final actions to track mapping. So basically what we do is, this is the action name from the Redux action. So we map the name with the transformation function. So the analytics middleware can grab the transform right here in line 13 by the action type from the object, right? Cool. Okay, so let's go back here. Webpack app. Okay. And just show you it again. How does it work? Okay. Hello again. And then we send a message. So it waits 2 seconds and it's been delivered and it clears. So this is how it works. So there are different ways of implementing analytics. We can use the custom data attributes, which I mentioned. Just imagine it's about what we are talking about, scalability options. So imagine you have a real production big site and you don't have analytics. So people came over to your desk and they say, okay, we need to implement analytics on the side. And you can start scratching your head because how do you implement? With custom data attributes, you need to probably add custom data attributes all over the place. So it's going to be a very tedious job. So next to go to the next option. We can just add window data layer push because then we have the power of JavaScript, so we can do that in a nice imperative way. But if you think again of a bigger scale application, then if you sprinkle around window data layer push all over the code, it's going to be fairly unmaintainable after a while. So why don't we move all this stuff into an analytics module? So in the analytics module, we can just import it in and say import when we click on button, push this to the data layer, and then we do that all over the place. It's still not that maintainable as it could be. So we already know the map dispatch to props kind of pattern. So why don't we use that kind of thing? So instead of literally at the place we implement window data layer push or just pull some import in some named functions from this analytics module of ours and use that in the code, why don't we just separate that into two? We kind of create a layer of separation here, and then we do that in the on button click. This is how it would look like, just to give you an example. If I can find the place. Hello. That's not the one. Okay, forget it. Let's go forward. So you've seen it. On button click, we separated the two concerns. We are not doing just cowboy coding. So the next thing is, the next level, we can take this into the Redux sections level. So why don't we say all these components, we need to do some tracking. They don't know anything about the tracking. All they know is they need to dispatch some Redux actions, and these Redux actions are going to be bound to some analytics events. Magic. Not really magic, is it? So we have this analytics middleware. All it does, it watches for actions to be tracked using that mapping. So whenever an action comes in by the name, it's going to look it up. It's a lookup table, basically. It's going to look it up. It's a hash map. That, hey, do we have this message sent? Oh, yeah, we have this. Okay, cool. So if we have that, let's grab the state. Let's see if there's any transformation implemented for this action. And then once we created the data we need to push to the data layer, just push it to the data layer and forget about it. Cool. So it pulls from the store. Just to repeat, it transforms data for analytics specifically. So you probably have an analytics documentation. It says this is how it should look like, a big, gigantic nested object. And it pushes data to the GTM data layer. And why it's good? Because it's a loose coupling. You just created an abstraction layer on top of the whole application. You didn't just put some code in here and there. It actually has some mindful architecture, let's say. Cool. So why is it important? Because what we need to understand is our application, between our application and analytics, there is a contract. There's a contract, and the document I just mentioned, that is the contract, that describes the contract. And analytics is actually a consumer of our application. It's very similar to what you think of the UI, front-end, back-end platform, and all this chain down from the user. The user needs to have some functionality to use your site. So that's going to be a requirement to your UI, and the UI needs some data to show for the user and some functionality. That's going to be some requirement to the backend. So it goes all the way down normally to the platform. So it's very similar. The analytics is a consumer. It has requirements towards the front end, the UI. And we need to share information. So when does it break? It breaks when we don't maintain this data layer properly. So in some cases, I saw some implementations where the Redux store and the structure of the Redux store was kind of tied to the analytics setup. And as you know, probably by experience, that we need to change the analytics settings or the setup sometimes, right? Because the analytics folks are constantly working on improving it, adding more tracking, understanding the user behaviors better. We add a new feature. We need new analytics setup for that, triggers and stuff I mentioned. And if we have a tight coupling, that means you just grab some data from the Redux store and then just push that to the data layer because it's available. Just do whatever you want to do in GTM to set up your tracking, guys. That's going to be very problematic in two cases: when they want to change or we want to change, we want to refactor a Redux store, which happens quite often. So the data layer is very similar to the Redux store. It's a layer of abstraction. GTM extracts information from there, and it needs to be kept clean, especially in a single-page application, because normally in a traditional website, when you navigate to another page, the data layer is going to be reset because you reload the GTM.js again. You're going to start from scratch, basically. But in this case, you just add some stuff to the data layer, and it's going to be a mess. And it's going to be very difficult to debug and time-consuming what went wrong when the analytics part captured wrong data. So if you want to avoid that, you need to be careful. Cool. So do we hate analytics? Most people probably don't like it. So how can we fix that? So if you think of analytics as another requirement in your application like any other, then that's just another requirement. So there are issues which we don't like as developers. So you usually need to do this afterwards. So you build a feature, it's all cool. You presented it to the management or the stakeholders, and then okay, we have a ticket for analytics. How do we do that? So retrofitting can be challenging. Consider the options we went through. How can you implement analytics in your app? Unfortunately, the Google Tag Manager docs are not really developer friendly, so that sucks. You need to go and Google everything. There are brilliant articles, posts, blog posts, but you need to still grab that from somewhere. Cool. There is this 3 omegas thing when you can refine the requirements of your new feature. And it's really useful when you do the 3 omegas, and then you include the part of the requirements part of the analytics. So you discuss the analytics up front before you start developing something. That I found it really helpful. Ooh, this is what I wanted to prevent, and just the last one I screwed it up. Cool. So add your analytics requirements to the acceptance criteria as early as you can. and then build your analytics layer, which we just went through on a high level, or not that high level probably, with the first feature. So if you set this up at the very beginning, if you have a greenfield project, if you're that lucky, then it's going to be very easy to add new analytics trackings. So to wrap up, analytics is for everyone, even for Santa. Is there? Right. Analytics is not rocket science. I managed to learn into it. I'm not an expert in analytics at all, but I managed to learn into analytics to some extent, which is enough for me to understand what needs to happen on the development side. Collaboration helps a lot. Talk to your analytics folks. They are probably 3 floors above you, but you can still find them. Think architecture and scalability when you want to implement analytics in your code. And if you use Redux middleware, I just showed you, and it's not rocket science, and I didn't invent it. It's a very simple code. Other people invented it already and implemented. And you map your actions to the analytics events, then you should be just all right. And don't forget to keep your data layer clean. So learning analytics, hopefully, is going to make you a better developer, more friends, on the 7th floor. And thank you. That was it. My name is Marton Hipszki. I'm from Equal Experts. You can find me on Twitter. I retweet everything I find which is JavaScript related. So it's a giant list of JavaScript related stuff. Try the demo. It's on GitHub. Look at the code. That's the link. And I believe that was it. Finally. Thank you. I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, questions? Please ask me questions. Can I put this back?
Hello.
Is it possible?
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
It works. Hi. Thank you for your talk. I wanted to ask you, because you talked about a lot of the technical aspects, but sometimes what I've found most infuriating about analytics is the communication with the analysts, because it's devs versus analysts sometimes. And I was wondering how you, in your experience at Equal Experts, have found that it works or doesn't work to communicate with them, or like determine what the tags are, or how do they communicate to you what their requirements are, that kind of stuff.
Right. I feel your pain. Probably all of us. Yes, so they think in a very different way because they are thinking in analytics way, and we are thinking in code. So what I found is that we need to find the common ground somehow. In order to do that, you really need to invest in your knowledge in analytics, right? You can just grab a coffee and go and ask them a few stupid questions. You feel yourself stupid because you don't have any knowledge of analytics at the very beginning, but it helps. So conversation helps, but you need to read into it. At least that was my approach. So I really Googled for days and collected loads of articles which I'd like to share. Is probably going to be in that repo if you're interested in. It's not in there yet, but I'm going to put my tremendous amount of links in there. So yeah, collaboration, having a chat, making friends, and then you really need to look into the topic as well.
Hi. I was wondering about, well, in your talk you were sending a lot of information to analytics, but what about having pages that have a lot of analytics as part of their content, like pages that have ontologies, something that is more complex to manage. Would you use the same kind of approach to actually populate your pages, or would you use some kind of different service?
I'm not sure if I... So what's the question?
My question was, I mean, which approach would you use to actually have dynamic single-page applications that have also a JSON LD or informations that Google structured testing uses?
I'm struggling to find the answer. So if we are talking about approaches, what options do we have? What options do you have in mind?
It's literally rendering some JSON LD as part at the same time as you're rendering your page.
Rendering in the browser or rendering on server side?
In the browser. So usually you have some kind of tool like analytics that checks the structured certain language. It's a bit weird to explain, but it's basically the ontology of a page when you say the Twitter handles or if the document is a page or an article. So you have some extra information, but you render it in your page so that Google can read it afterwards.
All right, okay.
Might be different than analytics, but...
So you need to have the information on the page, right? So you need to grab that information from somewhere. If it's a single page application, just simply rendering in the browser, you need to wait for that information to share. I think I probably touched on that, right? Unless you can't send anything, right?
I think you answered my question.
Yeah. So you need to wait, basically. If you do server-side rendering, which Enrico touched on with Next.js, then you are in a better position because you can do things on server-side. You can cache, right? Some information you already grabbed from some third parties, and you can put that on the window.data layer array, which is going to become GTM.js, basically, because when GTM.js runs, it's going to add a lot more stuff to that array-like something.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, good talk. I was wondering, when working in a team and probably a high level in terms of like features, when introducing analytics to your work and building a new feature for a project, how has this changed your development process in terms of having more information to draw on, finding what's important? Like, has there been anything that's sort of, from an analytical point of view, changed how you think about building new things?
So the Redux world really helped me to do that, because otherwise it's really difficult to grab the necessary information from here and there, elements and whatever, in whichever way you store it. So having most of the information which you can potentially send to analytics or let it grab basically from your data layer, having it in one place in the application state, that's really easy to work that way with that mindset that the only thing you need to reach out to is your Redux store, nothing else, basically. Does it answer the question?
I was thinking more on like, has there been any kind of learnings from developing a feature where you thought it's changed the approach by being better informed, it's altered the approach as to how you kind of develop things, or yeah?
So I have to be more probably mindful when I plan how to implement features like React components and stuff, because I can make it fairly difficult then to add analytics on top of. The approach probably changes when we think that the analytics requirements are just requirements in your whole bag of requirements regarding a feature. And also, as we already touched on that, you need to communicate. You need to collaborate with other people in other disciplines, because just when there is a handoff, like, okay, document transferred through Google Drive or whatever to you, and then you read it, you're going to be in a fairly awkward position to decipher it. So go to the 7th floor.
Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Hi, sorry, one question.
Thank you. There's another question, if we have time for that. A minute or so.
My question is about GDPR is coming into force in a few months. Does this change how you're doing analytics and what you're tracking and not?
Yes. How does it change? How do you meet the requirements of or the legislation? Okay, I think that needs to be taken care of by the analytics guys, right? Because they are writing the requirements for you, as we saw. So analytics asks for stuff from your UI, so therefore you are serving analytics from the UI. They need to tell you what needs to be and what shouldn't be done regarding those rules. Does it answer the question? I answered it from the developer's point of view. So, okay. Any more questions, or are we done?
Yeah, that's it.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, Marton.